On my bike around the south of England talking to voters, do you know, three politicians, one of the things a lot of people talked about was this was a contest between Theresa May and Labour. They didn't say, and Jeremy Corbyn. It does seem to be that it's the Labour Party that people might vote for rather than Jeremy Corbyn when they say that.
I don't think it matters if you vote for the Labour Party and the broad church that we represent, or whether you vote for your local candidate who's working incredibly hard for you where you live, your Labour candidate. I don't think it really matters. I just think we need to get across the clear message that only Labour are going to get the Conservatives out this election, and we need you to come out and we need you to vote.
But do people say, Jeremy Corbyn, Prime Minister, really, to you?
I think you always have that. I think people don't always identify with different personalities. But Jeremy Corbyn is consistent, he's strong, he's been very supportive to me in my local area. And I think that actually it's about the manifesto, which I feel so positively about. We've got so much to talk about. It's pushing Labour into a whole new aspirational space. And I just want people to read it, get behind it and see how the country could be.
People don't talk about Conservatives. It's all Theresa May on the bus. It's pushing her. Is that the whole point?
Well, it absolutely does matter who your leader is, especially at a moment like this when we face a challenging national time, when we're going to have to go into Brexit negotiations to get the right deal for the country so that we have a stable economy which can fund our public services, which matter so much to everyone in this room and in this country. And I'm sorry, but I think that Theresa May is the right person to do this, and Jeremy Corbyn would be terrifying going into those negotiations. He would be terrifying as a person responsible for our national security. So of course it matters who your leader is, but it also matters what is in that manifesto. And the Labour manifesto is a list of spending commitments without a way to fund them. And if we actually look at the way in which they would be funded, it would be sky-high debt, sky-high taxes, and we cannot afford to have that in this country if we want to have a stable economy. We'll
hear in a moment from our voters about what they think about that idea. They don't say Liberal Democrat very much when I speak to them. It's all about Labour or Theresa May.
Well, I think that there has always been a struggle to get the Liberal Democrat message across. I have to say that I think that in this campaign in particular, because of the focus on Theresa May by the Tory party and the focus on Jeremy Corbyn by the media, in fact, as well, in terms of his ability to lead, our messages do struggle to be heard sometimes. But I think that does tell you something about our party as well, because we have a very strong leader in Tim Farron. We have a very open, honest leader with a great deal of integrity, a very normal leader who I think really people do identify with when they meet him and speak with him. But it is about the party. It is and about our messages and not all about the leader.
Right. Good. There's a good idea of the character, I think, of the three. We've got a proper choice this time, haven't we? Yeah. You know, we've always grumbled before. Deirdre Jaley, you've worked in the NHS for a long time.
Worked in the NHS and social services, yes.
Yeah. What do you think about the state of things at the moment, and what would you like them to say to you to win your vote?
I think an awful lot has been done to try and meet the crisis of far more older people with chronic conditions. But what does concern me, as in the old days we talked about a Berlin Wall between health and social care, the funding is separate, and social services have got much less funding for an increased population. And as the whole emphasis now should be on care at home and prevention, the services aren't necessarily there.
Get it joined up.
I want to ask whether there can be politicians getting together to work out a strategic plan for the funding for both, so that they're not these terrific divisions of people not being in the right place.
Right.
And this happened in the 1960s, and it's still happening. People in hospital who should be out, and people out who should be in hospital.
Since the 1960s, Nicola, why are things not changing? You're a minister in health.
Well, I'm not only a minister in health, but my father is a doctor. He was working in the NHS as far back as the 1960s. My mother's a nurse, and I'm a net user of the NHS. I have a chronic health condition, which means that I spend a lot of time in the NHS as a sort of mystery shopper, so I know exactly what it's like to be on the inside. But this issue about the need to integrate better not only our prevention services, our public health services, but also social care and the NHS is very well recognised. We have increased funding to the NHS at the Oxford University Health Service. The funding went up by 7% last year, by 2% this year.
But the demand is rising.
Demand is rising. So nobody is saying that it is not difficult on the front line. Social care services, the funding also increased. An extra 2 billion went in on top of the increase in better
Deirdre,
health
would you like to pay more in
just,
tax to fund this? So let's just hear from
I just
Deirdre.
want
Would
to
you
finish the point about integration, because this is the actual question that she asked.
Right.
But the fact is that if the funding increases in the NHS and it increases in social care, it doesn't solve the problem of needing to get the flow of patients going through the system more effectively. And that's exactly what the sustainability and transformation plans are designed to do, which just solve that problem.
Deirdre.
We're just at the beginning of that process now.
Yeah.
You need a Conservative government to make sure
Nicola?
that we can do that. and
Nicola?
fix that.
Deirdre.
The funding is still separate.
Yes.
And this, I think, is a major problem. So that the hospital is paying to get people out of hospital, and they're going all around the county when it should be more local, and the hospital shouldn't have to be doing this.
Carol, behind. You're also concerned about the NHS. What do you think about the answer you heard from Nicola?
I think you've got a point that the sustainable transformation plans are they are an aspiration. I think a lot of the things that have been written into them, particularly the I read all 78 pages of, I think it's 78 pages of the Berkshire, Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire, commonly known as BOG. But my comment at the end of that was that however good the aspirations are, unless you put money into training more staff, particularly staff who are specialists in what they're doing, then it's not worth the paper it's written on.
Okay.
And I just wonder what you're going to do about making sure that we actually staff the NHS properly, so that I find it appalling to read that some hospitals are now putting nurses on 12-hour shifts. I think that's a patient safety issue.
Can I come in, please?
Let's take Laura first of all on that point, and then come to you, Laetitia.
So I think the two main points we've been talking about are about integration and about funding. I think as far as integration is concerned, Norman Lamb, the Lib Dem Health spokesperson, has been working very closely to try and get cross-party working on this, because we need a sustainable future for health and social care. We can't keep having the NHS as a political football. We've got to try and work together to try and work out a solution for just this precious resource our country has.
Laetitia.
Thank you. The greatest achievement of the Labour Party, the NHS, I too have worked there for 8 years and absolutely cherish our service. Only Labour will invest in the NHS. And this is a crucial
Nicola says
time.
they are investing.
They are not. In real terms, there's been...
7% increase is
absolutely
investment.
not. We all know
And
there's been
we
a
recognise
massive,
that there needs
massive
to be an
cut.
increase going
we need
forward.
£6 billion investment, which is what Labour have pledged. £6
With no
billion
means to fund it.
investment each year. There are costed plans to fund it, Nicola, and you know there are.
It's an uncosted matter.
No, let me finish.
Deirdre, let's just let Deirdre come back
Can I
in
just
there.
finish my point, Peter, about
No, let's hear from Deirdre.
Okay.
It's not just about funding. It's that at the moment the money comes from different places and is...
I absolutely agree.
And it's
So you've more
Social
money, but it's got to be joined
care
up. There's got to be change in the NHS, hasn't
Social
there?
care funding has gone to the councils at exactly the same point as they've cut the council budgets, which has meant that the most vulnerable people have been on the end of these cuts. We all know it. We all know that our NHS is an absolute crisis.
Joan, what's your experience?
Well, exactly. Because I'm concerned about sustainability and transformation plans, and Nicola has said that they seem to be the great white hope, but unfortunately what's going to happen is that they're there to save £22 billion from the NHS. And in Oxfordshire, we have a local plan that's supposedly moving care from hospitals, as Deirdre is asking for, to the community, but without sufficient GPs who are going to have to take this up, without care staff, without nurses. We don't have the facilities.
Dev at the back, are you concerned about the NHS and the way it's being run?
Yes, I definitely do think so. I think I've been in hospital a couple of times recently, and there's not enough staff. Minor operations are always cancelled. GP appointments cancelled regularly to fit other people in. There's just not enough provision there.
Nicola, people aren't happy, are they, at the moment?
Can I answer answer on the staffing issue. So since 2010, in Oxford University hospitals, there are 300 more doctors and 700 more nurses, but the pressure on the service is significant because the demand is increasing at a faster rate than we have managed to.
We've had 7 years to put this right.
It is, as Deborah said, it is not simply a matter of money. It also needs to be a matter.
Money as well.
It is also a matter of making sure that we increase prevention so people don't get sick as much, so that there isn't so much demand. And some of the best services that we have are those that keep people out of hospital in the first place, such as those working at Abingdon Community Hospital, where they manage
Peter, the Conservatives cannot congratulate themselves on staff recruitment. We have 700 vacancies at the JR at the moment, the John Radcliffe Hospital in Oxford. We're having the Horton services cut back, and people are being sent to John Radcliffe, and the staff cannot cope. I've had messages and emails to me from staff at the John Radcliffe saying, we absolutely can't cope. We're at crisis point. We are worried about patient safety, and the Conservative government and the Conservative councillors and MPs locally are not.
And this is Oxfordshire. I mean, other parts of the south of England in the cities are struggling even more. Laura, can I bring you in?
We've talked a lot about funding and the need for funding and being clear about where that funding will come from. And we have a pledge as the Lib Dems to find that £6 billion a year, and it is from putting a penny on income tax.
The same as Labour then? Another £6 billion a year?
But we have said that it will come from income tax. That's £2 billion for social care and £4 billion for the NHS. Healthcare, and that will come from a penny on income tax. And we feel that most people in the British country are perfectly prepared to pay that extra penny on income tax because they want to see these services continuing to improve.
Linda, you've run a campaign trying to save a surgery. Do you think it is just the money, and the penny on income tax is an easy thing that people might vote for? Yeah.
Yes, I think that's what we need, but I think the rich and the bankers need to pay their taxes, and I think then we'll get our hospitals put up to date, we'll stop the poor nurses going to food banks, we'll get our GP services up and running. Witney is absolutely foot to bursting. We haven't got enough GP services. They are struggling. We have to wait up to 8 weeks to get a general appointment, and there is 1,000 people still on the Deer Park site that haven't got a doctor. They are coping on their own. People are going to the John Radcliffe, and the doctors are seeing people up there that are really, really ill because they can't get a doctor's appointment or they haven't got a doctor.
So, Sarah, can I bring you in here? I mean, our NHS is still the pride of the country, isn't it? You know, and the research that's done in it as well. I know you're interested in science, particularly. Do you think that people are feeling worse about the NHS than they used to, or better?
I think it's interesting. We talk about staffing, and I personally believe that given that in all areas of science and technology and healthcare, women tend to be underrepresented. And actually, I've got a recent story about this. My friend just got 2 children under 3. She wanted to have a job share, a part-time working arrangement to make it fit in with family. Her local hospital said no, so she's actually moving to Sussex because of that. And that really concerns me because I think there's a solution here. I think, more women working part-time. There's a lot of talent there.
There's a lot of nodding going on around Sarah's point there. Now, look, Richard, you've had one good idea, haven't you? Because you run the bus services, the volunteer bus service. You've been helping people get their flu jabs.
Our Bus Spartans has been running for a year now, and it's a community-led, volunteer-run service. It's filling the gaps in the NHS and social care. But now we're looking to help other communities set up their own operations. How are you going to help us do this?
Right, and the bus cuts is something that's troubled a lot of people. You see, it's not just, as we're saying, it's not just more money for the NHS, it's getting people to get into those surgeries as well. Neil?
So my issue is that people are depressed. We've heard about the NHS for the last 5-10 minutes. We've got if you drive, you've got potholes to contend with. If you don't drive, there aren't any buses anymore because the subsidies have been taken away. And in our area, we've lost some key bus services. How are you going to reverse that and get a feel-good feeling back into a time of great uncertainty?
Sharon, you're looking at some of the local government cuts and the reorganisation. Do you think that this government is actually putting money where it's needed?
I think that there's a pretty big disconnect between the government policy and
assessing what the local electors and residents actually want. And for example, with the issue of the unitary government, unitary authorities at the local level, this restructuring of local government, there's not only controversy but contradiction in the different sides that are being presented. And I see no reason why the intelligence of the local residents shouldn't be measured by something like a referendum. We've been asked to vote on virtually everything else. I think by the time of the...
Patrick's pulling a face here. You don't think that's the answer. You're a first-time voter, aren't you?
Yes, I'm. So I turned 18